Happy Halloween, everyone! Thanks for joining me for our special Halloween edition of Harvey and Jill's Not So Perfect Reviews. As you can probably tell, Halloween's one of my favorite times of the year, and I mean, why shouldn't it be? I mean, you get to dress up, there's lots of free candy, and of course, there are lots of cool, spooky stories full of magic and ghosts and all this other crazy stuff. Now, I'll admit, I'm not a huge person for gore, but I do love a good ghost story or spooky story. So, what I wanted to do for this particular video was to actually review one of my favorite Halloween traditions for myself, which is to watch Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow. So for those of you who are wondering where Harvey is for this particular review, unfortunately Harvey is the biggest scaredy cat out there. And if you don't believe me, here's the proof. Harvey, look at this new mousy toy I got you. Look at it. Isn't it cute? Look, it even squeaks. Really? Come on, let's play with him. Come on. What? Oh, this is why we can't have nice things. You know that? Pathetic, isn't it? So sad. So sad. So yeah, Harvey ended up sitting this particular review out because even though I won't consider Sleepy Hollow the scariest movie out there, it was still too scary for him. So for those of you who don't know, so Sleepy Hollow was a film in 1999, and I might be older than some of the people watching this. And it was directed by, as I said, by Tim Burton and stars everyone's favorite weirdo, Johnny Depp. Well, maybe not everyone's favorite weirdo, but we'll get into that in a little bit later. Anyway, main thing is to know about this film is that it is based off of the American folktale Sleepy Hollow, which details the ghost story about the headless horseman and the poor schoolmarm Ichabod Crane and his terrible run-ins with this foul creature. So anyway, this particular actually adaptation of the story is very different. So before we actually get into the critique of this film, I'm going to give a general rundown. I'm not going to give away everything just in case you haven't seen it because I really do think it's worth a watch. It's a lot of fun. So let's actually just get into it. So instead of schoolmarm Ichabod Crane, we are actually given Inspector Ichabod Crane, who is sent to the small town of Sleepy Hollow to use his new scientific/forensic skills to discover who is responsible for a series of murder in this isolated community. So upon arrival, Ichabod is bombarded with the town's belief that the murders are the action of this supernatural being, the Headless Horseman, who was a dead Hessian mercenary risen from his grave to take revenge. So Ichabod tries to convince the town leaders that the murderer is just a person. But as his investigation does uncover the seedy and suspicious behaviors of the townsfolk, it also proves that he is indeed dealing with supernatural forces. So during his investigation, he also begins to fall in love with Katrina, who is the daughter of the unofficial leader of Sleepy Hollow, Baltus Van Tassel. So murder, witches, ghosts, and conspiracies haunt the rest of the film as Ichabod must figure out just why the horseman has returned and who is truly behind all these grisly murders. So, what do we have for our cast of characters? Because this is very much an ensemble film, even though, yes, Ichabod is the star, with Katrina kind of acting as, I guess, his leading lady. But as I said, it's very much an ensemble film because the cast of characters that are in Sleepy Hollow are just so amazing. You have like a great wealth of experience and actors who are just, they are legends. So let's get into it. So obviously, first off, we have CSI Ichabod Crane, if you would, who is, as I said, played by Johnny Depp, most people's favorite weirdo out there. And then we have kind of a Stepford version of Wednesday Addams with Katrina being played by Christina Ricci. So moving on to the rest of the cast of characters found within Sleepy Hollow, we have quite the collection of pop culture figures, that is. So first off, we have Baltus Van Tassel, who is Katrina's father, being played by Michael Gambon as a beardless Albus Dumbledore. Also within the Harry Potter alumni, we also have Miranda Richardson playing Lady Van Tassel, and of course Uncle Vernon, that is Richard Griffiths, playing Magistrate Phillips. Moving into other realms of pop culture, we have Prince Baruni, that is Jeffrey Jones, playing Reverend Steinwick, while Ian McDiarmid, aka Lord Palpatine of the Star Wars franchise, as Dr. Lancaster. Pretty cool. Furthermore, we also have Alfred Pennyworth, that is Michael Gow, as playing Notary Hardenbrook. And finally, we have both Casper Van Dien, who is obviously a Starship Trooper, as Braun Van Brunt. And of course, you can't have Sleepy Hollow without a Headless Horseman, and who better to play him than, real life charming ghoul Christopher Walken. So first off, let's talk about the character performances, because this is kind of really at the heart of this film, as it is, it's, as I said, it's an ensemble film, and, these characters are really what kind of populates this little town and gives it life, if you will. So, of course, I'm going to be talking about Johnny Depp as Ichabod Crane first. Now, before I get really into that, unfortunately, talking about Johnny Depp nowadays is a little problematic. There's no denying he's a talented actor, and, that's great and everything, but we also can't deny that the man has issues. Whether it's with drugs or alcohol or just plain anger management, his behavior, especially when it comes to Amber Heard, it can't be excused or swept under the rug. So, I do think he needs to kind of face the music, atone for what he has done, and hopefully get some help, because, he is a talented actor. Now, that being said, this is a movie review, and about a movie I really quite enjoy. It's my Halloween tradition. I love it. So, yes, I am going to be praising Depp's performance, but I just wanted to make it clear that, my admiration for his performance in this film does not mean I condone his bad behavior in his personal life. So getting back to the movie review, I do have to give props to Johnny Depp for his portrayal of Ichabod Crane. Now, we do need to address that, in the actual story, Ichabod is described as, kind of hook-nosed and not a very attractive person. And in this film, Ichabod is very, I guess would be considered conventionally attractive, or maybe not falling conventionally, but he's very appealing, physically at least. So, we kind of have to say, yes, this is a movie. It's not going, they want to have, a good-looking lead to a degree, but they do try to kind of, not really uglify him up, but, kind of give this awkwardness, not just through his performance, but, in his visuals, though it's usually through when we see him putting on his various, scientific equipment, usually his, different lenses that he puts over his face. I don't really know what to call them. It's like a wearable, I don't know, microscope or something. It's quite the invention. Now, part of the reason that I do love this character is because he is not a hero in the traditional sense at all. So we often see him frightening and acting in a way that many would consider unmanly. And, others will argue that he's like a full-on coward, especially when you see him, putting young Nazbeth ahead of him, almost as a shield when they confront this one witch, and how he cringes away from a spider and faints upon witnessing seeing the horseman for the very first time, or at least the real horseman, that is. No, actually, both horsemen, he's pretty easily frazzled. But his bravery actually comes from his stubbornness, that he is afraid and he shows his fear, but, he is still willing to continue to get to the bottom of this. I mean, he's also willing to, investigate into really gross things. I mean, he does an autopsy, which around back then was unheard of. And, he gets really bloody. And funny story, apparently, while they were filming this one particular scene where he's doing the autopsy, and you kind of see like the blood squirting at him. Apparently, Tim Burton was sitting off to the side, off camera, with a paintbrush full of, fake blood, and every once in a while he would just spray him with it. And I don't know, that sounds really funny to me. That'd be a great job. Spray an actor with fake blood. I think that'd be fun. Anyway, so as I said, his bravery comes from his stubbornness and his, unwillingness to give up. And, it's obvious he finds a lot of this very distasteful. I mean, when he sees like this bug crawling out from, the neck of this, off like dead torso, I guess, he just cringes back, but he is still willing to do this. So there is bravery in that. And I think it's kind of nice to show a male character, a male hero who doesn't really fit our definition of masculinity and, is still quite charming and likable. So as for Katrina, that is Christina Ricci, she does a pretty admirable job, I will admit. It's always kind of throws me to see her with that blonde hair. I'm used to, remembering her as Wednesday Addams or, in Casper with her dark hair, and it doesn't seem right. But still, she brings this kind of dark etherealness to this role. Now, despite this kind of fey appearance that she does have, it's really kind of interesting to note that she is no shrinking violet, and is actually the only person who goes out into these supposedly haunted woods to, track down Ichabod while he is looking for clues. And she has an iron will. There is the infamous church scene that I'm not going to try and give away too much about, but like, needless to say, the horseman is outside this church, circling it, looking for his next victim. Everyone is inside, freaking out. And she is being calm and collected and trying to make sure everyone is, or at least get what she needs to get done. Everyone else is just in absolute panic. So I think, for the most part, she's very strong. I mean, granted, until the climax of that scene, but I'm not going to say anything else. But still, she's pretty tough, So, moving on to her father, Baltus, and his wife, as well as the rest of the leaders in the story, they basically create this really amazing tapestry of, mystery, conspiracy, fear, and paranoia. These actors are legends, and they don't really need me to sing their praises, but it does need to be said that, these characters make Sleepy Hollow what it is. There is almost they're basically like a physical representation of this quaint little village with all these dark, sinister secrets. And I just love it. And if you love, small town mysteries, you will love this film. Finally, we have Christopher Walken as the Hessian mercenary, or the Headless Horseman, as he is known later on down the road. Now, he actually doesn't speak in this film. He mostly uses his body. He does scream. I think he shushes somebody at one point, but no lines are given. It's mostly his main role is to look scary, which, being Christopher Walken, we know that's pretty easy to do. However, that being said, I'm a little disappointed because this is probably my one main criticism about this entire film, was that I think it's such a waste. Like, he is an amazing actor, and I really would have loved to have seen a bit more development on the Hessian Horseman before his death, to kind of give us, all we know is that he's a murderer, and he took, love and bloodshed, and that's really all we know about him, which is, I mean, you're kind of making his character very two-dimensional, and I think there could have been, while it's interesting to know where he came from, I want more. I always want more. So that's my main criticism about this film. So while this film is mostly about, obviously, the tale of the Headless Horseman, there was also a lot of emphasis on the idea of witches and witchcraft, which I always love. I mean, any girl of my age, she loves the craft, she loves all that kind of stuff. So it's always really interesting to see this new representation. And so, we get this kind of look into the witch trials, the Salem witch trials. I mean, granted, we don't actually say it's Salem, because it probably wasn't exactly, but we do have, these flashes of what happened to these women. And yes, we do see witches as scary. They are, at least we see it through the Witch of the Woods, who, she's pretty terrifying, but at the same time, she's being helpful. So most witches are pretty benign in this film. So, getting back to the idea of the witch trials that are represented in this film, I don't want to say exactly how they are because I don't want to give away some like really kind of interesting plot points, but we get to see these horrors that some of these very innocent women went through. I mean, even if they were witches, they were not harmful, they were not they meant no harm, and to see the horrible things that they were put through, how they died, that is another element of horror, as we get to see that a lot of monsters are actually human and pretend to be righteous, and I think that those are like the real monsters within this entire film, and that's a huge theme of the human monster. And while we do have this supernatural force in the horsemen, you know, there's a bigger evil at work here. So it's really quite interesting to see. So finally, I have to talk about the visuals and overall feel of this movie. So first of all, I love the set. And I love, how they do everything. Everything's very foggy. It is very much this idea of a Sleepy Hollow. Like, when I mean that literally, it's this quaint little town, but there is something very sinister and creepy about it. And as the story unfolds, more of this, it's more of a, as I said, a small town murder mystery, which personally I love. And, yes, we know that the horseman is the one who is killing all these people, but there is a very human, very real person behind all this. So, you start to question, who's responsible for bringing this evil down upon them and why. So, if you're really into figuring out what a motive is, or like who's doing what for whom, conspiracies, theories, all this kind of stuff, you will love this movie. Now, that is to say, while it is kind of, it almost, I guess, kind of ekes more towards a murder mystery than a full-on horror, there is gore still. But the gore in true Tim Burton fashion is kind of over the top, and it's almost unrealistic. Actually, it's pretty unrealistic, to be honest. So, yes, this movie is still scary, but, the blood is pretty fake. So for people like me who, I don't do very well with realistic gore, or at least the idea of real people doing horrible things to other real people. If it's monsters, ghosts, that kind of stuff, I can kind of deal with that a little bit better. Because, people actually hurting other people, that's real. That does happen in real life. So if I want to see horror, I want to see stuff that I know is never going to happen in real life. So, my favorite set piece in this entire film has to be the Horseman's Tree. And it is just, it is really a feat of, set design. Basically, this is not only the place where the Hessian is buried and where he brings his trophies, as you will see, but it also doubles as a portal to hell. And, it's super creepy. It's almost kind of Lovecraftian, even though Lovecraftian is more science fiction, but there's this idea of like of this hell dimension kind of thing. It's so creepy and I love it. Finally, we also have, the musical score, which is done by Danny Elfman, who is a good friend of Tim Burton and usually does the music for most of his films, if not all of them. And it's really hauntingly beautiful. If you can get your hands on some of the soundtrack, I highly suggest it, especially the track entitled "The Witch" from Sleepy Hollow. It's pretty creepy. You will feel pretty scared just listening to it. You can get a real feel for what this film is all about. I could sing this movie's praises for days, but I think I'm going to cut it short here. So I really hope you enjoyed. And if you have not seen this movie, go watch it. Go find it. You can probably find it in a bargain bin for like $5-10 tops on DVD. It is really worth it. It's easily one of my favorite Halloween movies. As I said, it's my tradition. I'm gonna go watch it probably in a few days, or actually maybe right now, depending on when this comes out. So anyway, once again, happy Halloween. Be safe out there. Have lots of fun. Dress as you like. Just, don't do blackface as we said. Have lots of fun. Get lots of candy. Once again, be safe. And, have a good spooky time. Anyway, until next time.